Recording, fantastic. So welcome to part 4 of our Mindfulness for Beginners. And today we're going to be looking at the space of the mind, what the Buddhists call Mahamudra. And we are going to notice our thoughts and our emotional responses as they just arise, as they abide, and as they dissolve, almost like clouds floating across the landscape of our mind. But let's recap before we start. In fact, even before that, does anyone have any questions or insight or shares from the meditation in the last couple of weeks? Have you been able to keep up your practice? Thumbs up? Yeah, good. Yeah, what are you starting to notice about the stability of your mind? I'd love to hear. Just come off mute whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Just about to say something, I think.
Oh, yes.
What were you going to say?
Much calmer, less thoughts actually going through your mind the more you do it. And yeah, much calmer.
Yeah. I also find that. How does that affect the rest of your day?
It just keeps me on an even keel and centered. Even when something terrible happens at work, I had about 2 weeks ago, I had like quite a big sabotage event, but it took me 3 hours to get over it. And since then, it's been much better. Much better.
Amazing. It's so helpful, isn't it? Doing this. Yeah. It's very compatible with positive intelligence. You've all done the positive intelligence program. Yeah. John has probably done it. Did you do it a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's
amazing. All right. Anybody else want to share anything? Any feedback on how you're finding the meditation practice and how it's affecting your day? Or should we just jump straight in? All right, let's jump straight in. All right, so mindfulness, what is it? It's the experience of the moment without judgment or interpretation. And last week, what we did was we unpacked those 3 parts of that. So the first one was the experience of the moment, right? Now, you would have experienced this when we did this exercise, right? Just that calm presence without thought, without narrator. Just, when we PQ rep or we're meditating, we're just now, experiencing the now of the moment. Then the next one is the judgment. So our mind, as we experience anything and everything, our mind will either rate it as good or bad or neutral, meh, right? And if you think something is good, it leads to grasping. I want more of that. I want more money. I want more things. I want more feelings of feeling good. I want more loving in this relationship. I need to grasp, right? And then the other one is the opposite of that. I don't like. I don't want. And what you have is aversion, pushing away, right? And if you look at this whole attachment, this grasping and this aversion, this is the cause and the conditions for suffering. And it stems from judgment. So judgment and the judge, as you all know, is one of the key conditions and causes of our suffering. And that comes from ignorance. It also accounts for pretty much every single conflict, every single war, especially if you look at the idea of them and us, right? Them, bad, judgment, us, good, wonderful, grasping aversion. And even though it serves a purpose, at its very slightest, it's a case of, is this person safe, right? And we do that in the first 4 seconds of meeting somebody. We suss out, are they safe? Now that's discernment. That's good. We want to keep it. But as we start to watch our mind, and you're going to have a chance to experience this today, you're going to notice how we judge everything. We label everything. We respond to everything as either don't like that or do want that. And that includes our thoughts. Because as you know, if we don't want something, or if something bad or traumatic has happened to us, we try and resist ever feeling that way again. our mind focuses so much on avoiding it that we're holding that object in our consciousness in order to avoid it, as opposed to truly letting it pass through and letting it go. So that in itself creates more suffering. So judgment happens for everything. And that creates the way that we show up, the way that we behave, and the outcomes that we experience that then feed back in that lovely loop that influences our thoughts all over again. So we're in this bit of a what do you call it, that tunnel, this propaganda tunnel of our own making. Yeah. So mindfulness is experience of the moment without judgment or interpretation. We've covered judgment, we've covered experience of the moment. The interpretation, right, this is your narrator. And I'm sure you've started to experience, right, when you start to meditate, all that commentary. And in fact, there could be commentary about the commentary. Hands up if you've experienced that, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm doing really well. Oh, who's saying that? You know, oh, this is a shit, session. Maybe I should just constantly narrating. And sometimes if you sort of tune out and then you suddenly become conscious of your narrating, it could be utter garbage, right? It's like all where your thoughts go to, it's completely random, right? So when we cease that, when we cease judgment, when we cease the stories and the rackets that we have about how we perceive the world, it and us, then we've got a direct experience of the moment. We're being mindful. And we practice mindfulness because it gives us a quality of attention that is sharp and focused. They call it still and vivid. So still as in it's not wandering everywhere, and vivid is the sharpness of it, the clarity, right? And within that, we also feel this bliss, right? This happiness, this luminescence. That's how they describe it. It's a case of luminescence, calmness, and bliss. And that's great, but that's not really why we do it. That's just a fantastic byproduct. So why do we practice mindfulness? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. The first is so that we can make our mind pliable, because really we don't have a mind. It has us most of the time. We are reacting to our thoughts. We are at the whim of whatever our mind wants to serve us. And most of the time we don't even realize that we're a puppet of our own saboteurs, right? And so when we're able to become mindful, we can hear the narrative, we can hear the judgment and go, that's interesting. Now let's be objective about this. Is it helping me? Yes, okay, let's reinforce that. If it's not helping me, I'm going to reframe that. I'm going to change that. I'm going to choose what my mind attends to. I'm going to choose the information that I put in there and how I show up, right? So that's the first one. It makes your mind pliable. The second thing is it allows us to make conscious choices attached to that, right? Because we are aware of the emotions we attach to these thoughts and our responses. And then the last one, and this is really what the Buddhists use it for, is to watch out for what they call mental afflictions. So mental afflictions are things like anger, jealousy, fear, anxiety, stress. All of these things are mental afflictions. And by watching these mental afflictions and not indulging them, they're able to step back from the precipice of reacting and responding to their thoughts, which creates a cycle of karma, right? Indulging those bad behaviors of grasping and aversion that then keeps them stuck in this wheel of suffering, in this life of samsara, right? Which is this illusion, this illusory life where we think that we are, right? That we are this self that is unchanging, permanent, fixed. We're like this. Well, we're not all like this. All we really are, and as you'll start to notice as you meditate, is you're just a stream of consciousness. That's all you are. You're just an awareness of all of this stuff happening. Last week we talked about this idea of clouds across the sky, right? And we think we're the clouds because it's got rainstorms in it, and the clouds are ourselves, and drama and we're indulging this idea of whatever that is. But also the clouds can be circumstance, right? You aren't those clouds. You aren't your saboteurs. You aren't your thoughts. You certainly aren't your circumstance. You're the blue sky beyond. You're the consciousness just watching it. And when you think of it from that perspective, you could be whatever you want to be. How do you want to show up? Do you want to be the blue sky expansiveness, or do you want to be stuck in the rain clouds all the time? Right? Now, the Buddhists really do this mindfulness practice because, and we covered this last time, because really what they want to achieve is enlightenment. They want to break free of the shackles of this idea of reality, right? And they want to be able to experience whatever that moment is without judgment, right? They want to be able to let go of this idea of this unchanging self. So what they do is they use the stability that you have of mindfulness, and they use it on a type of meditation, which is, they call it Vipassana. It's called insight meditation. We use a type of it when we do our coaching, because we go in and we start to unpack and we sort of strategize and pick apart how we respond. We get insights. It's basically an insight meditation. But the Buddhists use it to start to pick away at all these concepts that we built, concepts around self, concept around how everything out there that we grasp is permanent and fixed. And when they have that stability of mindfulness, and you put that together with the insight meditation, they're able to really see beyond. That's self-actualization. And that's what they're in it for. And it's worth saying that when they achieve enlightenment, it's not as if they're out there on Alpha Centauri, doing something, having a completely different life. They're still here doing the same things, but it's the way that they experience the world is very, very different, right? So the foundation of the mindfulness practice that we've done is all based on relaxation. The very first thing that we do, if you remember the routine, is we relax. We take a couple of deep breaths. We relax. And we start to recall why we are meditating, right? We rejoice. We remember the benefits. And then we set the intention for what we're going to do on the mat, right? Otherwise, we'd just drift off and end up reacting. So we set our intention. And then ever so slowly, we start to bring our attention out from the outside world inwards, using our tactile sensations and then using our senses. And there's different types of meditation objects, right? You've got the breath, always interesting, always with us. Or you can do more coarse, like breath at the abdomen, or more nuanced, breath at the tip of the nose. You can also take as the object of meditation a lot more subtle things, like your energy fields. They call it prana, for example, in yogic terms, right? So your energy surges in your body. You can also take an external object, like a Buddha statue or a flame. I don't know if you've ever focused on a flame for an hour. It's actually very, very relaxing. So you can meditate on whatever to bring you into that stillness. And really what we want to start doing, and we're going to practice all of this, we're going to do a big meditation today. And I'm going to lead you through all of this step by step, so don't worry. What we want to do is we want to start asking your awareness, right, to keep checking in every 7 breaths or so. So watchfulness is going to become the close companion to awareness. And it's going to keep on telling awareness, check in every 7 or so breaths. Just make sure that the state of mind is focused and sharp. Now, if it's dull, slumping, correct your posture, breathe in, right? Energize, and then focus on the object again, right? Notice that you've noticed and celebrate. Amazing. If your mind is bag of frogs, overexcited, your head will be tipping back, correct your posture. And maybe what you want to do if your brain is overexcited is you want to pick an object that is a bit more coarse. If you were at tip of the nose, go to your abdomen, because that gives it a wider scope for it to get fascinated with on the object. Yeah. And then what we're going to do, and the last part of the meditation, is we're going to focus on the mind. The mind is going to be the object of our attention. Now, it's worth noting that there has been very little research into the state of the mind. I mean, this is something relatively new for scientists in the West. There's a great book here, right, where Buddhism meets neuroscience, where the Dalai Lama went in America and he met the top neuroscientists at the time. This was in the 70s. To see how he could help them. And it soon became apparent that even terms like mind, they had no definition for. Consciousness, they had no definition for in the West. Whereas in the Buddhist terms, because they experience it from the inside out, they don't study it from the outside in, They had like over 50 terms for different states of consciousness. And this idea of mind, it's separate from the brain. Your brain is the physical organ in your head, but where does your mind exist? And isn't it interesting to note that there has been no hard scientific evidence that shows how the mind relates to the brain at all, or even, you know, the definition of it, or the definition of consciousness. They're still arguing about, you know, what constitutes, what is it when they say is an animal, what's the expression? Sentient? Yeah, they're still arguing about it. So the Buddhists know, because they've gone there, they've been doing it for thousands of years. So today you're going to become psychonauts, right? You are going to get into the space of your own mind and you're going to explore, because as humans, we've explored the moon, right? We've explored the oceans. And most of us don't know what's happening between our two ears. And it's fascinating, right? So we're going to start to use introspective observation. Okay, we're going to access what's called the substrate consciousness. This is the area of consciousness that's above sleep, but it's below your normal waking state. It's the space in between. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch the parade of content that goes through your head, right? So imagine you're sitting on the beach and you're just looking out to sea, and there are people walking past you. You know, you might see the woman with the red dress, or you might see the harried mum with a young kid, or you might see the guy with a kite, right? And what you're going to do is you're just going to watch their objective appearance. First of all, you're just going to watch them float across the screen of your mind. Interesting, right? You're going to notice how the thought just arises, how it abides, and then just how it dissolves. And then the second thing that you're going to watch afterwards is we're going to add on another layer. You're going to notice the subjective appearance. In other words, what is our response to that? And you might notice the judgment, and you're going to notice the interpretation as well. So that could look like, oh, that's a nice red dress, or the woman in the red dress, or God, doesn't that poor mum look harried? You know, is that kid ever going to stop wailing? And, you know, oh, God, I remember that day, those days, and it's really tough, isn't it? And off goes the narrative, right? And within that, you're going to notice the physiological response in your body. So start to notice how we grade things in our mind, good, bad, or neutral. That could be anything from that thought is bad. I'm giving myself a hard time for having that thought, right? And then the very last thing that we're going to do, you're watching the parade of content. You're watching your own response to that parade of content. And then what we're going to do at the end, this is my favorite part, is we're just going to watch the space in between. There's a lot to do in this session, and you can take this and rewatch it and unpack it. If there are any of these you would really enjoy, I would just highly recommend you do this, because what this allows you to do is go out into life and start to experience the parade of content through your thoughts, your reaction to it, how you judge it, and how we create that karma that keeps us in that loop of the same stuff happening, right? And then create more choices. So, you guys ready for the meditation? Yeah? All right, so I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes now. That's right. Take a deep breath and acknowledge yourself for being here, giving yourself the time, the space. Acknowledge yourself for the willingness. Amazing. And I want you to call to mind why you're here. What are the benefits that meditation offers you? And let's set the intention for this sit. We're going to start by just watching our breath and asking our awareness to check in every 7 or so breaths to make sure that our mind is on the object. If it's dull or excited, to just correct that, right? So we're going to ask watchfulness to come in. And then later on, we're going to explore as the object of our attention, our mind and the parade of content that goes through. But for now, I want you to just notice this lovely warm energy that's at the top of your head. You can almost feel it above your head in the crown. And I want you to notice how it's like a gentle, warm, relaxing wave that goes over your head, relaxing your forehead, unspooling the tension in your ears and jaw and neck. That's it. Feeling the tension of the day or the morning just ease off between your shoulder blades. You may notice your shoulders dropping down a little bit and adjusting yourself if you need to on the chair to make sure that you're comfortable. Feeling this wonderful relaxation just seeping down, softening the muscles, your clavicles and shoulders, gently moving down your arms, over your chest and back as it moves down towards your stomach and your lower back. And it's not just your muscles that are relaxing, all of your organs are relaxing too. And that's it. Feeling this beautiful, warm relaxation spreading over your hips and your sit bones, feeling this delicious heaviness of your weight against the chair as this warmth begins to spread down your legs, over your knees, down your calves, over your ankles, and just melting through your feet into the ground as we bring our awareness in. And I want you to notice the weight of your feet against the floor. And see if you can distinguish the feeling, the tactile sensation of foot against floor. That's it. And if your hands are on your body, like on your knees, I want you to see, just observe that feeling, that tactile sensation of your hand, feeling what is below. Notice the points of contact. Notice the texture, the temperature of whatever it is that your hands can feel. And now I want you to switch. If your hands are on your knees, I want you to put your attention on your knees and see if you can feel your hands as the pressure, the weight on top. Is it easy to distinguish between your hands and your knees? That's it. And you may become aware also of sounds. Just notice a sound as far away as possible. And what about sounds as close as possible? Can you hear your heartbeat or your breath? And what about your taste? What can you taste? And what can you smell? Can you smell more with one nostril than the other? There is so much that we can explore as the object of our attention. And I want you to just notice the state of your mind now. Is it dull? Is it excited? And ask your watchfulness to just alert awareness to check in every 7 or so breaths now. As you focus on the breath at your tip of your nose, and I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes with the odd check-in. And all you're doing is you're watching. Your attention is on the breath at your tip of your nose. And every 7 or so breaths, you're going to check in the state of your mind, taking corrections where needed against dullness or overexcitedness. If you do notice that your mind has drifted, label what your mind is attending to, celebrate, and bring it back to center. Noticing what your mind attends to, if it's distracted, celebrating, setting your intention on each breath. And if it's easier, you can say in on the in-breath, out on the out-breath. Trying to maintain as much clarity as you can on all of the sensations that you experience on the in-breath and the out-breath. That's it. And as we move to explore the space of our mind, I invite you all to watch the parade of content as it drifts across the screen of your consciousness. And just watch the object, first of all. Watch out as it arises, abides, and dissolves. And watch it without grasping to it, without wishing it to stay, without repressing it. Just observe. And you can still check in every 7 or so breaths to make sure that your mind is finely tuned, holding the object of attention, which is the space of your mind. And as we observe these fleeting thoughts that arise, abide, and dissolve, I want you to turn your attention now towards your subjective awareness. So, how do you respond to these thoughts? What judgment or interpretation are you putting on this parade of consciousness, this parade of content across your consciousness? So you take your response as the object of your attention now, and do so without grasping or pushing away. Get curious. You are just kind awareness, loving awareness. That's it. Checking in every 7 breaths or so to keep your mind sharp, not dull, not overexcited, still and clear. Notice any response to your thoughts, reactions. And if you need to move or shift, or if you feel any discomfort, notice that also as part of that parade of content going through your head. Resist if you can, but if not, set an intention and move mindfully, purposefully. That's it. Notice how you're responding to your thoughts. Notice the judgment, notice the stories. Let go of control of the breath. Let go of control of the mind. Let go of grasping to concepts. Just be that conscious awareness. That's it. Now, lastly, I want you to watch the gap between these appearances, between the parade of content. Watch the gap. This will be imbued with non-conceptuality, no stories. It's blissful. It's bright. Mind the gap. Checking into the state of your attention. Is it dull or excited? Take corrective action now. And going back to watching the space, watching the gap between the content, between the thoughts. Taking a quick snapshot of what your mind is attending to in this moment. I want you to slowly start to bring your attention back into this room, into your body. Taking a couple of deep breaths, connecting into your feet to ground yourself. We've been in the space of the mind, so it's good to ground yourself. Now, whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. Yeah. Well done. So please unmute yourself. And there's a couple of different things that I would love to hear back from you on. So the first one is, how did you find that? The second one is, what did you observe in terms of the thoughts themselves? And then your response to them, your subjective response. And then lastly, the gaps, the quality of the gaps. So who wants to share first? And we'll do a round. Do you want to go
I'll
first?
go.
Yeah, we'll go
I don't
clockwise.
know how I look on your
Yeah.
screen, but I'll go for it. Maybe it's because it's very early in the morning, but to me it was sort of like this almost like a dream state. That's kind of how I felt, where it was like watching. I don't even want to say it was watching because it wasn't like that. It was sort of like experiencing. It was more like a 4D theater, but like I was just in the theater as opposed to, in the, in the action, uh, so to speak. So it's a little, it felt a little bit when you're coming out of it, like right now, like I just woke up from a nap. There's a little bit of that, that kind of fogginess. So I think I'm still kind of waking up the mind. In terms of like the space, like I heard your guidance. I was doing, to the best of my ability, the things that, we were supposed to be focusing on and or not focusing on and watching and observing. But it's almost like I have no recall of kind of what that was like. I did feel like I got to a point where I was letting go. And then at the end I felt there are these times where I would feel kind of different sensations in different parts of my body. Like at one point it was very high up. I'd never actually felt it very high up in my chest. And then towards the end, I had it, which is something I've experienced before, where I kind of felt it a little bit lower, kind of like in my sternum and just above my stomach. And then there was sort of like this upwelling of energy that I could kind of feel kind of cycling kind of all up and down, uh, my back and into my head and whatnot. So it was more experiential um, than than I think a conscious guidance.
And I've heard you talk before about that energy flow that I call it
Yeah,
electricity. It's like that electricity in the spine. Normally that's because
yeah.
our channels are open, our chakras are open, our energy points are open. And the more you start to meditate, the more you'll become aware of these amazing energy flows. And once you get to, because there are actually 10 stages of meditation for monks, to get to that level of actualization. And the higher ones are really all about that energy cycling and also stilling it, because it can be so blissful or so overwhelming that, you kind of got to still your mind a little just to accept it. But yeah. So did you notice any interpretation or judgment or storytelling around those sensations?
Mm, um, Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Like, it had been because I've experienced it before, but it's been a while. I haven't actually experienced it in a while. So so it was new, not new, but it was sort of like, oh, this is this thing again. I've not experienced this in a while. And yeah, I think in there they were sort of like, well, what am I doing differently now? As you know, I went to very analytical, right? Why
Mm.
now? And why hasn't this happened in a while? And why did it happen before? And trying to understand. Um, um, was probably creeping in a bit. So I did acknowledge that. I was able to kind of get back to, well, just sit with it, and let it happen. So that was kind of a repetitive thing in all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing almost that grasping to it. This is nice. Why hasn't that happened? I want more. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Perfect. Have any of you others ever felt that sort of energy flows or sensations like energy in your body?
I just became more aware of my extremities, and I don't know whether that's because I'm coming out of a head cold, so I ended up being really conscious of the sensations in my throat and my nose and the ends of my fingers, actually, and my toes. I almost couldn't feel the middle of my body, is the only way I can describe it, but became very aware of everything else. And I think in that, I don't know whether that's affected anything any differently, and if in an experience where I was feeling physically better, whether that would be different or not, or whether that's something that I would experience again, even feeling physically better, I don't know. But I was really aware of almost a gap in the middle of everything was here or below my knees, really. It was very odd.
Well, there's one way that you can find out if it was teeth in an anomaly. You could try it again. I do that. So I sometimes punctuate along every single vertebrae in my spine just to see how much energy is available to me. And often I have whole chunks of my spine that feel offline. And that's normally, I know I need to breathe into it or sort of reactivate, or there's just stuff, and this is just your nervous system, right? Holding stuff in. So we disconnect from our body. And sometimes, what I was observing as I was looking at you, Jenna, because I noticed your head went slightly to the head and you were scowling a little bit. So I could see there was analysis and judgment and, overexcitation. But
Yeah.
that is amazing awareness. This is the purpose of the meditation. You can start to watch that.
I think that was probably because I was looking for other things that I couldn't see in this scenario. So you described somebody in a red dress and a mum with children, but I was almost looking around the shoulder, looking for other things to find. I was looking to find other things. And I think that might have been where this was coming from, because and then the dog was faffing about down here for a bit. So that was a bit, I don't know whether I was there was some of that, but I felt like I was almost a bit, not confused, but looking for other things to find. And it almost became a bit of a task.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So
See
how does that
something that
feel?
you hadn't already described.
Oh, okay. As opposed to just sitting back and letting it happen.
I felt like I had to see something different than you'd already described. So
And what do you notice about that?
I had to give myself a job to do while I was doing it.
Our mind wants to be distracted, it wants to have something to chew on. I think in everyday life, we find it very hard to just sit back and watch. And so maybe that can be the object of your meditation, is to just sit back and watch without judging your judgment. Because there is no wrong way of doing this. All you're doing is you're turning your gaze inwards and going, what's happening? What's happening in my mind? It's fascinating. Yeah. And did you notice just how random some of these thoughts are? My husband did this course a while back and I was watching the video, and he suddenly had yellow plastic just jump out of his mind. Yellow plastic, it seemed like the most important thing. He had no idea what it was about, but he was suddenly aware of that's what his mind was attending to. Yellow plastic. Okay. Yeah. What about you, Karen?
I found it just really peaceful and calming, and actually had very few, hardly any thoughts at all, really. I don't know. I just, was trying to still my mind as much as possible, and just focus on trying to look at the beach and the sea, and which we, love watching anyway. And so that was in my mind, and it wasn't too many people in it. It was mostly like the sea or the sunset that I was focusing on a lot, and that was just really peaceful and calming, and didn't really get any thoughts, which is good for a change.
You and Jenna were both on the beach watching the beach, whereas I wanted the object of attention to be tip of your nose as opposed to the beach, but it works either way. It completely
You
worked.
mentioned the beach, that's it. That was it.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
focused in our heads there.
Yeah, we're going to the beach for sure.
That's
Okay.
where I want to be. I'm going to be there.
Amazing. And what did you notice, if anything, about the gaps? Then, because you're saying there's an absence of thoughts. What did the absence of thought feel like?
It was good, yeah, nice and calm and peaceful. Really, it's that's the word I was thinking while it was happening. Really.
Yeah. So that to me is that space that we try and achieve during mindfulness. I get it when I am mindful of the gaps. And normally what happens is, it's like, if you imagine thoughts are like cockroaches and they're all over the floor. And then when we switch the light on because we want to see them, we say, show me a thought, they all scatter. And so I'm left with these gaps of no thoughts because I'm looking for a thought. And that's like really still, really deep. And that's where that feeling of blissful expansion comes in. It's just so nice. No thoughts. Yeah. What about you, Lucas?
Thoughts just appearing out of nowhere, but when you focus on them, they were disappearing, and the gaps between the thoughts were very peaceful. I was trying to concentrate on the tip of my nose and not think about the thoughts, just trying to let them spontaneously come. And they do, they just are the most random, bizarre thoughts that come out of nowhere. But when you look at them, like you say, when you switch the light on and they all scurry away, when you do become very introspective, they do seem to be sparser. Like during the week when you're busy with life, they do seem a lot louder and a lot more prominent. But when you do sit down quietly and still your mind, they disappear. And then the more you do it, the more I'm doing it, the more I'm finding it quicker to still my mind. It doesn't stop the thoughts, they still come randomly from nowhere. But when you kind of, I don't know who's looking, but you feel yourself looking at the thought. And when you look at the thought, their thought disappears. Whereas during the week, when you're busy and you're not trying to be introspective, when you're not trying to meditate, actually it's very easy to latch onto a random thought. It's just incredibly easy. You don't even realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
So more practice, I guess, until you get to the stage where you can just look at a thought and it disappears, or you can look at a thought and just concentrate on it. But a great feeling of calmness and peace, and it's left me feeling very introspective, almost like the guy earlier said, almost like you're in a dream.
Yeah.
When you're woken up and you feel like you're in that doziness, that where your eyes are just fixated on something for a few seconds. It was a really good session.
Well done, all of you. And you're absolutely right about, the more you practice this, the more this will bleed off the mat and into real life. You can turn the light on in real life and start to notice the thoughts and how you would normally have just indulged in them. So the Buddhists call it like your beautiful monsters. We have these beautiful monsters, these things that we attach to, these triggers, these programs, whatever it is. What we need to do is just be aware of them arising, right? Let them abide and let them dissolve. Now, we don't try and fix anything. We don't try and suppress anything. And we don't indulge the stories. Whenever you notice the I or the me or the them or whatever narrative, that's your ego stepping in and having, keeping up that racket. So we just allow our thoughts to arise, abide, and dissolve, and without attaching to them, without grasping or aversion. Isn't that interesting? And when we do that, we are no longer stuck in that reactivity state of just making it going round and round, doing the same old response. We're able to actually rewire our brain by stepping back and going, oh, maybe I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to get sucked in. And you do a different action, a different response. And the more you're able to do that, the more your brain rewires, the easier it's going to be for you to shift some really sort of negative habits. This is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. This is what a guy called John Kabat-Zinn took from the Buddhists 20 years ago, and he brought it back to the scientists here in the West and went, this really helps people for stress. And now it's actually used even in the NHS as a regular modality, right? Because you become aware of your thoughts, you're not your thoughts. You don't have to behave in a certain way. What you've achieved in the last 4 weeks, you've got the space of awareness. If you've got the space of awareness, you've got a choice. You're off the loop. What do you want to do about it? Yeah. We have covered so much in the last 4 weeks. We have really, built stability, built depth. We've given you different topics for your mind to try out. Do you want to take the object, your mind? Do you want to take it, your body? Do you want to take your breath? Go explore. Meditation should be really, really fun. And just keep on celebrating how it impacts your days, because that will really, really keep helping you. And on the space of the daydream-like state, I want to share with you, maybe close off, and I'll stay online in case anyone has any questions, because I want you guys to go and continue this practice. It's such a strong foundation. But I'll stay on if to answer any questions you have about ongoing practice or about the content. But as we close off, I just want to leave you this one very profound thing that a Buddhist monk once shared with me. He said, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily.
Life is but a dream.
Life is but a dream.
There we go. So once we start to notice that texture of how we experience reality in our minds, attending to some other daydream, and we bring it back here, it does question, doesn't it? What is this reality that we're experiencing? Which is the real thing? All sorts of questions arise, like, where are these thoughts coming from? What is the consciousness that is experiencing them? Who's driving the bus of my life? And these are all amazing questions. So as you become psychonauts of your own mind, enjoy. I mean, who needs Netflix when you've got your mind? So if anybody needs to go, can. If not, does anyone have any questions?
I've got to go up to the dentist, but we're having a session, so we'll catch up on the next session with
Sounds
you.
good.
Thanks,
Oh,
Juji.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your
Bye,
time.
Lucas.
I'm
Yeah.
going to head off as well. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
Take
Yeah,
care.
unfortunately, I got to head off on my day too.
Well, oh, lovely. Well, if you need to, just send me a message. Yeah, any questions?
Of
All right.
course.
Bye,
Will do.
John.
All right. Thanks, Georgie. Good seeing you. Thanks
Bye.
for this. This was great.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me just stop recording.